Hey everyone! So today we are going to learn about two-step inequalities. And in order to solve two steps, we need to see what operations are going around the variable. So in number one, let's take a look at what's happening. So number one, we want to get R by himself, but right now we've got this subtracting by 8 happening. So to undo subtract by 8, we add by 8 on both sides. So our 8 will undo. We have R divided by 2 is greater than or equal to negative 10 plus 8. Everybody get your calculator. So we've got negative 10 to, not divide, Miss Weldy, that's silly. Clear. Negative 10 plus 8 equals negative 2. Now to finish solving for R, we need to get R completely alone. So right now we are using this divide bar. So what undoes divide? You got it. We're going to multiply both sides by 2. When we multiply and divide, that undoes that operation of divide, leaving us with R must be greater than or equal to negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Now take a couple seconds and let's make our number line. Remember to put negative 4, your answer, in the middle of your number line, and give me a couple of numbers that sit to the right of that value and a couple of numbers that sit to the left. Now, remember, this is greater than or equal to. So are we open or closed? And I'm hoping you guys would say closed, Miss Weldy. So since we are closed, that means we are going to put a closed dot over negative 4, and our symbol is pointing to the right. So our shading or our arrow will go towards the right as well. Okay, now let's look at number 2. Number 2, to get our x by itself. X is literally side by side with the 10, and the 10 has a subtraction sign in front of it. So take it all together. Now, this 3 is positive. So in order to undo a positive number, we subtract from both sides of our inequality. So 203 minus 3, that's 200, is less than negative 10x. Now, to get x by himself, we need to undo that negative 10 sitting directly in front of it. So if it's directly in front, we undo this by division of negative 10. Yikes, now be careful. This is dividing by a negative. And when you guys divide by a negative in an inequality, the sign now goes from positive to negative, which means that our sign must also swap directions. So if it was pointing to the left, when I divide by a negative, it will now swap my sign or flip the sign. Flip the sign. And why we flip? When dividing by a negative number. Make a note of that. This is going to be huge. And that actually was a little bit of an issue with some of us. I didn't realize I put some negatives on there on your last assignment. So I did give you back and award you back points accordingly, but I should have also covered this on Friday. All right, so if you divide by a negative value, I flip my sign, and 200 divided by negative 10, in fact, gives us negative 20. Now, we also have an issue with the way this is written. And why is because this is not truly the direction that my sign is facing. And how I know is because X is not on the left side of the symbol. So when X is not on the left side of the symbol, we must rewrite this. So now we're going to put X on the left, -20 on the right, which means that our symbol must flip at least one more time, which is crazy. And why it flips is because X was not on the right side, aka the left side of my symbol. That's the only way your inequality can be written and drawn properly. So go ahead and sketch your number line. And so now we check our symbol. Since our symbol is strictly less than, there's no equal to, we know that this guy should be an open dot at -20. So we're going to put an open dot, and our symbol is pointing to the left. Because our X is on the left side of that symbol, guys, that's why we're allowed to sketch the arrow pointing that way. If you left your answer back up here, you would have actually drawn your arrow going the opposite direction, which is incorrect. Hence why watch out for this, guys. If your variable is on the right side, you must flip it around to make sure that that letter is on the left side of your inequality. Fair warning. All right. So let's take a look at number 3 and number 4. Right away, something should be screaming at you guys about number 3. And I know you guys are awesome and amazing. You should be seeing those parentheses, which means I must distribute. So what is 8 times x? Well, that's 8x. And what is 8 times -3? Well, that's -24. And we continue writing our question. Now, our ultimate goal is to get the x by himself. But right now, that x is surrounded by an 8. So in order to undo our operations, we're not going to subtract 24. We're going to add it over to each side. So let's go ahead and bring down what we know. So 8x is greater than or equal to -104. All right, let's get x by himself completely. Since 8 is sitting directly in front of x, we are not going to multiply by 8, but we're going to undo that by, you got it, dividing by 8 on both sides. Now you're dividing by a positive, so it is not going to flip our sign like it did in number 2. However, what the heck is -104 divide by 8? -13. And notice our x is on the correct side. It is on the left. So go ahead and sketch up your number line. And so if we have greater than or equal to, that means that we have a closed dot on -13. And since our x is on the left side and we are pointing to the right, that means that our arrow is going to the right side. All right, guys, last question. So number 4, again, we see this parenthesis action happening. So we are going to distribute first. And when we distribute, a negative times a negative becomes a positive. We want to get b by himself, but right now he's tagging along right beside a -5. So to undo our operations outside of b, we do not add, but we undo that by subtract. And when we do, we get -5b is strictly greater than 35 minus 15, ends up giving us 20. But in order to get b completely by himself, we have to undo that -5 in front of me. So we're dividing by a negative. And when you divide by a negative, guys, fair warning, we must flip our sign right from the get-go. So we have B from the left side, and 20 divided by -5, sorry about that, is -4. Now, since B, we'll make a note here, flip when you are dividing by a negative. At that point, you flip the sign. Why? Is because you're going from something positive now to something negative. And when that happens, guys, you're dividing by a negative or multiplying by a negative. And we'll make a note of that down at the very bottom here. Notice B is on the left side of the inequality symbol, so we're ready to draw our number line. And since this is strictly less than, that means we have an open dot at -4. And since B is on the left side, our sign is pointing the way we need to draw our arrow. So since I'm pointing to the left, that's which way I'm going to draw my line. So make a huge note, guys, that under two-step inequalities or any inequalities altogether, if you divide or multiply by a negative number, you must flip the sign. So this is a huge idea. And yes, Miss Weldy is going to be testing to see if you know that about your inequalities. So it might not be a bad idea if we put this last piece on our checklist for solving inequalities. When you divide or multiply by a negative number, you flip the sign. That's a huge idea. All right, now it's time to practice.